Teotihuacan, meaning the City of the Gods, is a sprawling ancient city in Mexico that's best known for its pyramidal temples and astronomical alignments. Built more than 2,000 years ago, Teotihuacan's age, size, and complexity can make it seem otherworldly. Scientists suspect that over centuries, a mix of cultures, including Maya and Mixtec, built the city that could house more than 100,000 people. With its murals, tools, transportation system, and evidence of advanced agricultural practices, Teotihuacan is often considered much more technologically developed than should have been possible in pre-Aztec Mexico. By far the most well-known of Teotihuacan's buildings is the massive Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest such constructions in the Western Hemisphere. The pyramid's curious alignment is believed to be based on calendrical cycles. What inspired them to build this? Could it have been an alien intervention? One such artifact that has gained mainstream attention is the Antikytherian device. It is now known it is a clock, an astronomical computer. It was found in a shipwreck off Greece, so its exact age is unknown, but we know it is very old. The device is very complicated and has cogs that turn precisely to track the sun and planets, including planets that were not known to exist in antiquity. Yet someone made this, crafted it together, and designed it to be very accurate. Modern reproduction models of this device are very precise. Who made this? How old is it? Where was it used and by whom? It's one of the many questions historians tackle as they study it. So far, archaeologists and science is baffled. A huge circle of stones, some weighing as much as 50 tons, sits in the English countryside outside Salisbury. Known as Stonehenge, the Neolithic monument inspired Swiss author Erich von Däniken to suggest it was a model of the solar system that also functioned as an alien landing pad. After all, how else could these massive stones have ended up hundreds of miles from their home quarry? No one knows what exactly the meaning of Stonehenge is, but as with all the other sites in this collection, the explanation could be aliens. Instead, scientists have demonstrated it's actually possible to build such a thing using technologies that would have been around 5,000 years ago when the earliest structures at the site were built. But would they know to do it? It appears as though the stones are aligned with solstices and eclipses, suggesting the Stonehenge builders were at least keeping an eye on the heavens. The popularity of the ancient alien architect theory has grown to great prevalence. This popularity must be mostly attributed to the televised phenomenon of shows such as History Channel's Ancient Aliens. Some sources of information on the topic are found on websites such as theancientalien.com. and archaeology books like Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods and Andrew Collins' Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods. No matter the popularity of the theory, it is indeed extraordinary. The belief in the ancient alien architect theory defies all bounds of modern scientific knowledge, rejecting traditional accepted requirements for a legitimate scientific theory sometimes. There is no physical or historical proof that provides definitive evidence to support the theory, and yet it holds. No matter your personal opinion on the theory, it is undeniably rampant, controversial, and extraordinary, and it may very well be true. For those who hold stock in the ancient alien architect theory, explanations abound. For example, at the time at which so many of the ancient monuments in question were built, our perception of the necessary technology was not invented. This begs the question as to how our ancestors managed such a feat. Additionally, many of the monuments, Egyptian pyramids, Easter Island heads, etc., have curiously precise alignments with the stars and patterns of the sun. Without telescopes or geometric equipment, this type of precision seems highly unlikely for humans to muster on their own. Interpretations of cave etchings and hieroglyphics seem to reveal images of helicopter-type vehicles and structures reminiscent of a flying saucer. Had our ancestors not been visited by ancient alien architects, how and why would these images appear? Lastly, there is undeniable similarity between structures that were built hundreds and thousands of years and miles apart. Without ever having seen these other locations, how did our ancestors duplicate them? To those who accept the ancient alien architect theory, it seems that the only logical explanation to these mysteries was the visitation of higher intelligence race of aliens. On the other hand, there are many who reject the idea of the ancient alien architect theory. From a technological standpoint, it is true that scientists are still working on figuring out how exactly our ancestors managed such large architectural feats. However, modern discoveries and research has uncovered explanations and theories based in legitimate scientific process. For example, a recent study based out of Egypt led to the discovery that water can be utilized to make the transportation of heavy blocks easier. This sheds light of the question as to how our ancestors managed to move such heavy objects without modern-day technology. Circumpolar stars such as Polaris and lines of rope could have been utilized as a method of aligning the buildings so precisely with star patterns. While scientists and archaeologists acknowledge that these actions would have been difficult, they would not have been impossible. Documents and building plans have been found in places such as Egypt as well, describing the large workforces utilized in these projects. For those who reject the theory, they see no actual evidence of its claims. They seek proof in traditional and logical scientific process. Those who believe the ancient alien architect theory are not alone. Believers come from every walk of life, every age, and every socio-economic status. There is a social fascination with the topic, and it is widely popular across many platforms. Social media, television shows, blogs, and even support groups devoted to the theory allow believers to hold strong. The prevalence of the show Ancient Aliens undoubtedly attracts many to this theory. Movies like The Day After Tomorrow and Independence Day, while not focused primarily on ancient architects, promote fascination with alien conceptualization. All of these platforms make it hard to ignore the topic and allow believers more and more outlets to solidify their convictions. When considering the psychological explanations that may account for belief in such a theory, a few come to mind. Ad ignorantum refers to the idea that something must be true if it's not proven false. This is key in the mind of a believer. Instead of saying, "Let me show you proof," they instead say, "Show me proof this isn't true." Hasty generalization is key as well. Jumping to a conclusion based off insufficient evidence is found in nearly every claim within the ancient alien architect theory. This ties in with the slippery slope ideas as well. A small idea is conjectured, and instead of analyzing or trying to disprove it, the idea snowballs into an entire theory. For example, when considering the issue of how the pyramids were built, some argue that hieroglyphics found on site resemble helicopters. A believer assumes this to mean that a helicopter-type vehicle was present, and since humans did not have that kind of technology, they then assume that an extraterrestrial visitor must have brought it. And so if they were present, they must have been helping with the construction of the seemingly impossible pyramid construction. Instead of accepting alternate explanations, a generalized theory is created and seemingly explains the mystery. These psychological explanations account for why so many fall into this belief pattern. It seems nearly impossible to reject an idea when everything seemingly fits. The characteristics of pseudoscience are tricky and can make almost any issue believable. Humans seek explanation and the comfort of understanding. When tackling an issue such as those ancient marvels, it is natural to search for any explanation, because it defies what we see as possible. This is where the ancient alien architect theory gains so much attention, and how it continues to spread. Just outside Cairo in Giza, the most famous of Egypt's pyramids rise from the desert. Built more than 4,500 years ago, the pyramids of Giza are monumental tombs where ancient queens and pharaohs were buried. But how exactly did the Egyptians build these things? The Great Pyramid is made of millions of precisely hewn stones, weighing at least 2 tons each. Even with today's cranes and other construction equipment, building a pyramid as big as that of the pharaohs would be a formidable challenge. And then there's the astronomical configuration of the pyramids, which is said to align with the stars in Orion's belt. As well, ancient theorists often point to the fact that these 3 pyramids are in a way in better shape than others built centuries later. So, are Egypt's pyramids artifacts of aliens? Today, you can find just about any place with a quick Google search. But in times past, to get from here to there, you needed a map. Maps have been used to chart every point known around the globe. The more accurate, the better the map. And when trusting your life to the sea, you wanted the best map you could get. So when you went there, you didn't end up somewhere else. In 1513, a trip to the New World was all the rage, and accurate maps were needed to get to this newly founded land. Enter Piri Reis, a cartographer. Piri Reis served in the Turkish Navy, for which he held the rank of admiral. He used 20 different maps and charts as his source documents to create what today is called the Piri Reis map. 8 of them were palimpsest maps, maps of the known world according to the 2nd century Hellenistic or Greek society. 4 were Portuguese maps. 1 was an Arabic map, and 1 was drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. It was considered a very accurate map. But here is where the map gets weird. Along with depicting Africa, South America, and various islands accurately, it appears to show Antarctica with no ice caps. Antarctica as it would have looked over 6,000 years ago. Antarctica has been covered with ice for over 6,000 years, and no one has sailed around the planet before it froze over. So how could a map, referenced from older maps, have depicted the continent so accurately? Modern satellite mapping, which can peer through the ice, confirms the map is accurate. It correctly shows the outline of Antarctica as it is under the ice. Paris had referenced a map that displayed Antarctica correctly. So where did that map come from? Who would have known in 1513 that Antarctica is a continent and not just a huge landscape of ice? Who could have mapped it over 6,000 years ago when no one could see it and tell it was a continent? No one knows. It's a huge mystery. And now you have a new map to ponder over. A less ancient discovery, but very important to modern culture, is the famous Shroud of Turin. The shroud is said to be an ancient cloth that covered the body of Jesus Christ when he ascended from his tomb. The power of his ascension caused an image of his body on the cloth. Determining if the shroud is authentic means following its timeline from the tomb to Italy, where it is now. The history of the shroud from the 15th century is well recorded. It's the time backward from then to the death of Jesus that is in question. It is said the shroud was taken to Turkey to heal a king, then made its way to Italy. Connecting these dots of where it was is part of history. The other part is how an image came to be on the shroud. Tests have shown it is not a painting or contains pigments of an impression. Pollens from the cloth seem to tell its origin is indeed from the correct area Jesus was buried. There are several reddish stains on the shroud suggesting blood, but it is uncertain whether these stains were produced at the same time as the image or afterwards. The image on the shroud appears like the negative of a photograph, though photography did not exist in the time of Jesus. The image clearly and accurately depicts the wounds on Christ and blood that flowed from them. Some believe the shroud is a simple forgery, while others point to the blood and other accurate points within the image and the cloth itself dating to the proper age. In 1976, Pete Schumacher, John Jackson, and Eric Jumpner analyzed a photograph of the shroud image using a VP8 image analyzer, which was developed for NASA to create brightness maps of the moon. A brightness map interprets differences of brightness within an image as differences of elevation. They found that, unlike any photograph they had analyzed, the shroud image has the property of decoding into a three-dimensional image, when the darker parts of the image are interpreted to be those features of the man that they were closest to on the shroud, and the lighter areas of the image of those features that were farthest. The researchers could not replicate the effect when they attempted to transfer similar images using techniques of block print, engravings, a hot statue, and bas relief. The Shroud of Turin is either an accurate image of Christ on cloth, or it is the cleverest forgery ever constructed by an early man. In May of 2018, Turin's International Center of Sidenology held its annual meeting in Chambéry, France. The primary topic of discussion was a new reevaluation of its carbon dating. Giant walls are built to keep people out, or keep people in. They are barriers, usually built for political reasons to hold off an invading army or group of unwanted people. In some cases, they may be used to house people or protect animals. In any case, a wall is something of a huge discovery in archaeology. If you ever find yourself driving through Rockwall, Texas, you may ask yourself why this suburb of Dallas is called Rockwall. Well, there is an ancient wall there. You can't see it because it's buried, but it's there. For over 160 years, scientists have claimed the wall is nothing more than a natural formation. Most people living in Rockwall, Texas, do not even know that their city is named after an ancient rock wall city, complete with a skull of a giant that was found while some people were digging a well looking for water a long time ago. The wall is an almost perfect rectangle, 4 miles wide and 7 miles, encompassing more than 20 square miles long, with most of the wall being buried. The top of the wall, at all outcroppings found to date, have a uniform elevation of 550 feet above mean sea level. Mary Patty Wade Gibson is the granddaughter of T.U. Wade, founder of the wall at the Rockwall County Historical Foundation. She described the additional digging her grandfather and other men did at the home site. In her description were cubicles or rooms constructed of stone which you could walk through and would reach a corridor which seemed to run in a direction into the hill that the town square sits upon. She told of an incident in 1906 of 2 unidentified men digging out the corridor which had apparently been filled with erosion. Their intent was to reach a room or cavity under the town which might be full of gold, apparently derived from a story from Indian legend. The ceiling of the corridor had steep slopes, describing a Gothic-type arched ceiling, much like the Mayans built, and the further into the corridor the 2 men excavated, the steeper the slope of the ceiling became. Consequently, the men, fearful of a structural failure, abandoned their search for gold. Mary Patty Gibson also says that during her grandfather's exploration of the wall, he discovered on the outside the wall went straight down. On the inside, she described the wall going down to about 40 feet, curves inward, and becomes much thicker. Additional information provided by the daughter of the late Mr. Deweese, an early settler of Rockwall, who described a doorway with a diagonal-shaped stone in the wall at the Wade residence on Highway 66. This portion of the wall was open to visitors from 1936 until the late 1940s, and was consequently backfilled because of dangerous structural conditions. In 1949, a Mr. Sanders of Fort Worth, Texas, did an excavation of the wall. From this excavation, 4 large stones were brought up, with the largest weighing approximately 2 tons. On these stones were found inscriptions with what appear to be pictographs. The Dallas Morning News on the 5th of November 1967 reported that back in the 1920s, T.H. Meredith said a well was dug on his farm just east of the town of Rockwall, and Mr. Meredith declared that though digging went alongside a masonry wall which seemed to have an arch over a doorway or window. Metal rings were found at the site, which was composed of tin, titanium, and iron, embedded in the rock. You can see it in this photo just above the pickaxe. Of course, all this material and the skull have been lost, and much of the wall today cannot be seen. It's also unlikely any modern excavations will happen because the town has grown and is now an urban section next to Dallas. But if you drive through Rockwall, Texas, you can think about what mysteries may lie just a few feet below your car. Searching for alien artifacts on the moon is possible. If there was alien technology in the solar system, this is a good place to look because the lunar surface is relatively stable. We search right here on Earth for artifacts in the genomes of terrestrial organisms. This might be as simple as a message uploaded into the DNA sequence of a microbe. Human scientists now do this all the time. Or in the existence of a shadow biosphere, implanted here, say 100 million years ago. However, there is a risk that we might not even recognize alien life or technology if we discovered it. From ancient artifacts to monuments and structures on our planet, as well as others, seem to suggest we are not alone, and mankind has been visited and influenced by extraterrestrials. Perhaps one day we will be able to travel back in time and see where such structures and artifacts came from. But still then, we can only massage the science and try to understand the technologies that once existed, or determine if they were inspired by someone else. We live in a wondrous world with mysteries and questions all over the globe. But when it comes down to it, the only real question is, what do you believe? Did aliens inspire or even create some of the curious structures and artifacts we're continuously finding? Or is it man himself, more intellectual than we have ever considered? The answer to our questions may not be in the stars, but rather right here on our own planet Earth. Outside the old Inca capital of Cusco, a fortress rests in the Peruvian Andes. Built from enormous stones that have been chiseled and stacked together like a jigsaw puzzle. Some say it could be the work of an ancient civilization that had a little help from interstellar friends. The 1,000-year-old interlocking fortress walls are made of rocks that weigh as much as 360 tons each, and which were carried more than 20 miles before being lifted and fit into place with laser-like precision. How an ancient culture accomplished such a feat of engineering is a little problem to solve. In fact, it isn't the only example of this intricate masonry. Similar walls exist throughout the Incan Empire, including one in Cusco where a 12-angled stone has been carefully wedged into place. Did aliens help with or inspire the creation of these monumental structures? It's unlikely the Inca had this technology. Is the truth out there? When astronomers peer out into deep space in search of alien technology, they're often looking for big objects, such as a Dyson sphere, a theoretical Death Star-style space station built around a star to harvest its energy. A civilization capable of building a Dyson sphere would have to be highly advanced, because it would take decades or even centuries to build such a structure. Jason T. Wright, Associate Professor of Astronomy and Astrophysics at Penn State University, became world famous after speculating that the mysterious behavior of a distant sun called Tabby's star was caused by a megastructure moving in front of it, although this hypothesis has been dismissed. The idea that we should look scientifically for evidence of alien technology in the solar system goes back to Ronald Bracewell in 1960. Although, of course, people have speculated about Martians and such for centuries, he said just 100 years ago it was totally reasonable for scientists to discuss the possibility of technological life on Mars. In the 60s, the Mariner probes showed that the Martian surface has no obvious signs of large technology, and so people assumed it, and the rest of the solar system, must not have any sort of technology on it at all. But no one has put scientific numbers to that assumption. How much of the solar system have we checked? Sure, we could rule out the existence of big cities on nearby planets, but what about smaller things? How long would something last on the surface before we would not recognize it as technological? The search for bigger structures out in space requires a different strategy. Finding artifacts outside the solar system is a whole different matter. In that case, we would not be looking at images of things, but perhaps for the heat it gives off, or its shadow as it passes in front of a star. These sorts of artifacts would have to be tremendously huge, bigger than Earth, for us to even notice them. Space is large. So if we find something around a star 1,000 light years away, our radio waves haven't even gotten to them yet. Even if we do ever set up communication, it will be thousands of years between messages, so contact will be pretty limited and slow. However, Wright does believe that if we do find signs of an alien civilization, then it's probably still alive.